Alright, hello, welcome to another Unity tutorial. So today we're going to just go over something kind of simple, but it is very powerful and also kind of very cool. So we're going to do level switching or level loading or scene loading, or load scene script. So that's what we're going to do here. It's very simple, but if you do it the right way, you can actually do it multiple ways. It is very powerful. So here we are. We have a simple scene. This is not my credit. So I took a couple assets from the Unity asset store. Boxophobics, water. I'm sorry, sky, and then we have the simple poly. I think a little poly water, which actually does move. And I think this one right here is. This is part of the low poly scene as well. Sorry, low poly water scene as well. But this is just their prefab island, so I can get this to you real quick. Explain what's going on. So we have two scenes, and I'm going to show that here. We have our daytime scene, and then we'll load this real quick. Make sure to save. This is our nighttime scene. So changed out the sky here, and a little bit of campfire and dim the light. So pretty much that's about all it is. That's just to convey two different levels. Alright, and what we're going to go back to is actually the first scene, and it just named the sample scene. Okay, this is our daytime scene, and there we are. Okay, so that's the easy part. Well, after you've built your level, I just grabbed prefabs from the asset store. So what I did, you can do this many different ways. You can base it on condition, like destroyed all the enemies and suddenly level 2 appears. That's an example. You can do it as you teleported, and now you teleported like 12 hours in advance. And that's what we're going to do in a way. So we're going to base this on this little cube here, and let's just say this is our time machine. We can go in 12 hours into the future. I know. But it's going to load level 2, which is our nighttime scene, or our second level. That's what I'm trying to convey here. So, and like I said, you can base this on many different ways. This is just, it's all going to be the same kind of somewhat script, and in the future, as we have new versions of Unity, there could be other ways to do this, but this is what we have in version 2021 3.21 F1. So that's what I'm using today. And I'm going to switch the camera. So in a second, so we have a box collider here. It's set to trigger for our cube. Okay, so you can just create a simple poly cube. Our box collider, set the trigger. We add a script, but also make sure this rigid body is in there. Very important for this to register the collider with our first person character. Okay. You can do this, I think you can also do this by button press or key press, whatever condition you set. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Alright, so we have that all on the cube here, nothing fancy. Make sure gravity's turned off, because if you click this, it'll fall into the abyss. Or it'll probably, since there is a collider on here, which I added in there, it'll just hit the ground, maybe tumble a little bit. Alright, so switch the camera out to our next screen. Alright, so the script that was attached to the collider, sorry, to the cube, this is it here, level switch. Okay, get rid of the other ones, so this took a little bit of setup. So nothing too major, so make sure you have the library attached here, or entered in, using Unity Engine.Scene Management. This allows us to have the knowledge in Unity to do what we need to for scene management. Okay, so that's what we're going to get here, scene manager. Now basically this is going to be when the first person player collides with our game object, or on trigger enter. So it's based on a trigger. The other object, so it's looking for the other object. You can base this on tag, so you can base it, you can set your player tag to tag, I'm sorry, you can set the tag for your player to player, forgive me. And then if you really want to test it, if it even shows up, you can add this in level 2, but we will know for sure because we know what our second level looks like. And this should work for also 2D. Okay, now if you're going from a 2D to 3D project or 3D project to 2D, I don't know if this is going to work or if that's even a possibility. I think this will just be the same as, whatever's in your project, and it'll just open the next scene. Okay. So this one's based on trigger, and what we enter in for the syntax is scene manager dot load scene, and make sure that this is spelled right. This is the string it's looking for that is according to the actual name of your next scene that it wants to open, which is this one here, your nighttime scene. Okay. In previous versions of Unity, so let's say you're using a much older version, like say 2018, I think we had to actually add in an underscore, like such. Forgive me, that is incorrect. It would have to be as such, and that would register the space. I think they fixed that like in 2019, and then you just add that in there. So whatever you add in, it's got to be the same name as what is in the, what is the same name as it in Unity. Okay, so that's got to be what it is. It has to be spelled the same way. If it isn't, it's not going to open. Okay, so that's everything there. Now, if you just run this game and collide with this object, it will not work still. Okay, it will process, but Unity will throw this like weird error saying like, oh, this hasn't been added into your scenes, and you could find that if you go to File, Build Settings, right here. Okay. Now, two ways you can add the add open scenes. If it's not open, you're only going to still get sample scene. Okay, you can still click here, click, hold, and drag up. Okay, and let it go. Okay, and that'll register, like it's been included in there, and then you should be ready to rock and roll. Okay. The other way, I think I've used it in the past, but I really don't like it. It's just not for me. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You could just add in, I think, the number of that scene, which you can find right here. So we know that's 1, and I think it will accept it. Let me see real quick. Forgive me. You can add the scene number here. Okay. And it should load, but let me see if it's going to throw an error at us. Okay, it did not so far. Let's give Unity a chance to think. Okay, it didn't. Okay, we're all good. No errors here. Okay, and what we're going to try to do is see if it will register based on number of the scene. We'll just see what happens. Okay, there's our cube. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So you can do it two ways. You can either do it by string, so you can have those quotation marks. That's a string, or the name of the scene. If your name is like really complex, like somewhere down the line, your work pipeline just has these like long elaborate names, and that can be kind of cumbersome just to type in, and 3 a.m. or whatever, like me. It's 3:52 a.m. here. I wanted to get this out online. You can just simply throw in a number. Just remember to make sure you know what number this is. Okay, that's very important. So if it's the wrong number, you'll end up adding in the wrong scene. So make sure you know for sure. A couple of things is, one, if we go back to our main screen, make sure you have the correct number. Okay, if you're not using numbers, make sure you have the correct scene name. Okay, and make sure it's spelled right. Back over in the other location where we have Visual Studio, make sure this is the correct number or correct scene name. If you're going to use a string, make sure you have quotation marks. Okay, like we saw before. So make sure it's make sure it is spelled correctly, and it must be, I think it may also be case sensitive, so make sure you have all your capitals right. Okay, so correct spelling, correct case, and correct spacing. So that's pretty much everything, and we saw it work, so it looks like it's working to me. but we will try this one more time based off of string. We'll give Unity a chance to think real quick. The beauty part about this is you can have multiple scenes, multiple levels, and your project file will more than likely be getting bigger and bigger as you add more scenes. But if you have a second level, you can do a lot more. The other scene I don't believe is still open in memory, so I think you're decreasing your memory usage. You don't have all these big vast worlds. If you decide to find another island, somewhere out in there, that nice nighttime sky, that other island doesn't exist. You only see what you see. So sorry, you only have what you see. Okay. And that's it. So I'm sure there's other ways to do this, but this is kind of one of the more simpler ways. So just to kind of reiterate real quick, we're going to just make sure we have, for this version, so I have an object, and you can always turn off the mesh render. This is what happens when I have coffee and it's like 3, almost 4 in the morning. You can turn off like receive shadows, but usually when you have the mesh renderer turned off, it'll cancel out the receive shadows, I believe. Have a box collider, set the trigger. Spear colliders should work, but be careful with spear colliders. Sometimes you get some weird things going on. Have a script, so we can always just go in to here, add component, type in new script, and then go on there and put in a name. Okay. So at that point, and this is what happens when we turn off the mesh renderer. There we go. You want to go edit that script. Okay. Make sure you have your correct library entered in. Okay, very important. And I think for other versions in the future, this will probably change. But for 2021, this is what we have to use. Okay. If this is based on the trigger or colliding with the trigger object. You don't have to put this. This is just kind of a test message, so I'll print straight to console. But this right here, the syntax here will be very important to add in. Make sure its spelling is correct. Either have the number or have, this is called a string. So for you data scientists or you programmers out there, this is a string. You know what a string is. There's many different data types. Or add in the integer. I think it's an integer that is being used here. I'm sure somewhere in that library that exists, that somebody out there very important probably has some programming that we can't see. It's in there, but this does work. So make sure that that is all attached to the cube here. Probably turn off gravity here for the rigid body. Make sure the rigid body is included, and after that, just test. If you get any errors, check. Just say for the case of this, let's say I added in the wrong scene number, and you'll see something pop up. Unity will warn us. It'll say, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, you got the incorrect scene number, or it hasn't been included. So real quick, we'll check this. So right here, scene with build index 2 couldn't be loaded because it has not been added to the build settings. So that's what we had back here. So it doesn't exist because we haven't added it. So you'll get a similar error like that for a string, for a name. Okay, so that's what you'll get. And remember, any changes that you do in Unity while it is playing, with an exception of Visual Studio or the code editing, whatever you use to edit code, will not exist once you stop the game from playing. Okay, so that's pretty much an in-depth look on scene switching or level switching or level loading. It is very powerful. You can do a lot with it. Also, you can tell some pretty cool stories. For instance, this could have been we arrived on the island and maybe you built your scene here way more elaborately in the future, and then you needed a nighttime scene for later on, and after you built your fire, and that's the next stage of the story. So that's what we got going on here. I know this took a little bit of time, to elaborate on this, but this is something that is very important, very powerful. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you continue to use this to make your projects. And then you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.